Okay, I think we've given everybody a little bit of time to start filtering in. I'm sure there's going to be a couple more people coming in as we go. But now seems like a pretty good time to start. So I'm going to start. If you are joining us, as you may have guessed by your big screen, this is here. We're here to talk about the Boren Awards. If you had the opportunity to sit in on one of the Boren Awards presentations with the IIE group, you're going to find it incredibly similar, if not almost exactly the same. I'm utilizing the slides that they provide because I wanted to make absolutely sure that we gave you the information that they give you. That being said, there are some things that we've discovered here that normally as an advisor, I've become more aware of it, so I'll try to share my own insight as well. I'm very glad that you're here. We're going to be recording this webinar, so that if you are particularly interested in seeing it again, just send me a chat. I'm going to try and make resources available to people interested in the Boren Awards prior to the winter break, and for everybody who's here and for everybody who registered for these webinars, I will do my best to get all that information out to you as soon as possible so you can utilize it to your best advantage. And without any further ado, let's begin. I did want to give you a little bit of an understanding of the fact that this is coming from the International Fellowship and Grants Office and the International Institute. I also wanted to provide you with some quick links up there. I'll have these links reproduced at the end of the presentation as well. So if you wanted to go to the fellowship's website to see what we do or some other options, Fulbright, FLAS, what have you, that's a good link. And then also, if you need to schedule an appointment with one of us, you can. I do also want to add, if you find yourself going to look for an appointment and you don't see anything there, normally we try to gauge interest. We don't want to just block off 2 hours of time and then have nobody come and sign up for that. So if you're not seeing something there that you're particularly interested in, you can either go to a general advising appointment, or you can send us a quick email and say, hey, I don't see anything that's available for me. So just want to let you know. All right, so let's talk about the eligibility for the Boren Awards first and foremost. And this way you can kind of decide and self-select in or out if you might not be eligible for these programs. Additionally, I do want to add before I go any further, I am presenting this for undergraduate students who are interested in the Boren Scholarship Program, as well as graduate students interested in the Boren Fellowship Program. However, I am not the lead advisor for the Boren Scholarship Program. So if you have particular interests and you're an undergraduate student, it behooves you to go and seek out Michael Jordan in the CGIS office. However, if you don't find that you have the time to do that, I just wanted to let you know, even though it's not under our purview, I am more than happy to advise Boren scholars as well as Boren fellows. Just want to let you know. All right, getting back to eligibility. So hopefully if you're here and you're interested in the program, it's worth remembering you need to be a US citizen to apply. You need to be studying a foreign language intensively in another location around the world that is not an English-speaking location, and normally not in an area that is in a more developed country region. Sorry, I don't believe that's the proper terminology, but effectively to say we're looking for students to go to countries that are learning lesser known languages. Additionally, you must be a matriculated student. So you can't be an alumnus and you can't be on the road out of your education. We can discuss your options if you find yourself in one of those positions, but it's worth noting you have to be a student at a university in order to go on these programs. And then you also have to not be a citizen of the destination country that you're interested in. Now, if any of this information places you outside the eligibility of Boren, not to worry, the International Institute Fellowship and Grants Office does have more opportunities for you. Again, go check out our stuff. But if you're interested in Boren and you don't see and you don't fall into these categories, then you may want to seek something else. I also wanted to point out in the corner, you'll see there's these hyperlinks that are throughout these pages. These will direct you to the International Institute of Education's website. So the direct Boren application website. This is of great value to you because they have really good key information. We do have information up on our website, but they're obviously going to have the best one. All right. Here are the questions going to be, okay, now I know I can apply. How am I going to have a winning application? Well, the important part of the Boren Fellowship Program is that this is money to learn a critical language in another country on behalf of U.S. national security efforts. Now hold on there. If you're not particularly interested in, joining the military, that doesn't, then you're not necessarily excluded from the Boren program. So what you'll need to suggest as you are writing your application is, okay, there is a national security reason for you to go to the country you want to go to learn the language you want to learn, and to study the field of study that you want to study for national security efforts. And this can be any multitude of things. This can include immigration policy. This can include environmental policy. This can include economic policy. There's a number of reasons for why this might be, your topics might be national security adjacent. And it really becomes dependent upon you to make that argument. We also notice that for a lot of people, if you're particularly interested in engineering, voting security, technology security, those just like send you right in pretty much. So if those are areas in which you're particularly interested, this is definitely a good place for you. For those of you who are interested in immigration policy, human rights policy, and environmental policy, those are definitely applicable. And it's important for us to work together to make sure you have the best possible argument so that you can showcase it's a U.S. national security concern, not just a concern for the inhabitants of that location. But we can get to that. It's also good to note your academic interests and professional goals as well. You're going to be showcasing why you're going to continue the work in this national security area. There is also an element of public service to this. It's worth noting that, as you can see, Boren Award alumni have to commit to working in the federal government for at least 1 year. Now, when you are applying for this program, it behooves you to suggest that you might be working in public service for a lot longer. That is the kind of information that is going to lead you from going to just an applicant to an awardee. That being said, you personally may be thinking to yourself, okay, well, I don't want to work in the federal government for the rest of my life. That's fine. No one is going to hold your feet to the fire if you find out that you're only going to be invested in public service for a modicum of time. But if you are really interested in this program, you'd want to be suggesting that you're going to be working in public service for a substantial amount of time. And as you can see, they show a preference for people who are dedicating themselves to a longer amount of time in public service. Here's the other cool thing about this award is that when they say this public service and your dedication to go and work in the government, because it is a requirement, they help you with that. They're going to get you there. Because of your receiving a Boren Award, you will be eligible for certain positions that other American citizens will not be. Effectively, Boren Awards hold the door open for you into federal service. So if working at the State Department has ever been of interest to you, or working for USAID is ever of interest to you, those can be notoriously competitive places to try to get into. And you should be aware of the fact that when you apply to a job on USA Jobs, there's a lot of other people applying for those opportunities. But with Boren, they have to give your application specific consideration because you're trying to complete this public service requirement. So that's really cool. Additionally, let's say you're a master's student now and you're considering, okay, do I or do I not want to go and get a PhD after this? Well, you're able to tell after receiving a Boren Award, you're able to tell Boren, hey, look, I know I said I was going to go do public service, but now that I'm completing my master's degree, I'm going to go and get a PhD. And Boren will say, that sounds great. And they will wait for you to finish your PhD before you complete your public service. So they are really willing to adapt to your educational timeline, and they're willing to adapt to how long you want to be in the government. And even more on top of that, say you're particularly interested in working with a corporation or with a contracting organization, that will qualify. Another one, say for example, is if you're interested in the Peace Corps. A year of doing work in the Peace Corps is going to qualify as public service. So there are a number of different ways of serving out your public service term if you didn't want to work in public service for the rest of your life. The last selection criteria is probably the most critical and the reason why you're looking at this in the first place, which is to study a language and a culture that is identified as critical by the US government. So you want to be able to dedicate, not only are you is this language important to you now that you'll be working on it in country, but you're going to be doing it as well after you complete your Boren. So as you are writing your applications, you may be saying, okay, look, I've discovered, because I'm particularly interested in technology and firewalls, that I really want to learn Russian. And I haven't learned Russian before, but right now, this is what I'm doing to learn Russian now. Once I am in the Ukraine to study Russian for the Boren program, I will be learning it intensively in these ways. And then following Boren, I know I'm going to continue my study of Russian back at the University of Michigan up until the point that I graduate, and so on and so forth. So you're going to want to show them that you are fully aware that this is a language acquisition program. Additionally, they want you to look for programs and opportunities that maximize that language immersion overseas. So the idea isn't that you're just going to jump into one language class and call it a day. The good news is that Boren only requires that you are learning this language for 20 hours a day. And that can be through a multitude of different ways. That can be taking courses, that can be individual tutors, that can be conducting your research in the target language. However it is that you are defining your language acquisition, it's going to want to amount to 20 hours a day, which means a normal work week, that leaves you a whole additional 20 hours to basically do whatever you want, which is more than likely to be doing research or internships. Now, as you're writing about how advanced your language is going to become, you do want to set realistic expectations for your proficiency gains, but know that they are expecting you to become as proficient as possible. Additionally, it doesn't matter whether or not this language becomes required for your future career. So if it turns out you apply for one of those public service jobs and it doesn't really require that you know that language, that does not matter to them. And the fact that you know that the language is critical for this program is good enough. I see a question. 20 hours per week, that's correct. So we're talking about if you have the language courses will qualify, research in the target language will qualify, and you're going to be writing that throughout your application. Now, this is how I'm going to be learning this language. The point being is that while you may have your own personal aspirations for what you'll be doing in the country, that you are aware that in order to qualify for this award, language acquisition is a big part of it. I hope that answers your question. Let me know if it doesn't. Now, it's worth noting, especially if you're sitting here thinking, okay, what kind of programs do I want to do? How much do I want to design? That there's actually, oh, I'm just going to check that I got everything. Yep, excellent. There are two different types of eligible programs. So say, for example, you're not exactly into the idea of structuring your own program. There are these 4 different types. You've got African languages, Indonesian, South Asian languages, and Turkish. And as you can guess, that's because these are really critical and not enough people know about them. And so the Boren program is trying to make it as easy as possible for people to go and learn these languages. The second side is self-identified programs. Now, when it comes to these flagship language initiatives, I'm going to kind of breeze through these slides because I would imagine you're kind of coming in here with your own objectives. But it's worth noting, if you are feeling moderately overwhelmed about all of the different things you'd have to do to create your own program, it's good to know that there's just a wide availability of languages to do right now. And especially if you are a graduate student, it's really not hard to get these awards because there's such a desire for it. So, flagship initiatives, worth noting, They're available to anybody. They can be undergraduate or graduate. They are fully funded and credit bearing, so they give you all of the credits that you need for those courses. They're small class study. They may include a summer course at a U.S. university, and they're going to have fall courses overseas and include local homestays. So effectively, Boren has gone through and created the program that they want people to go on to learn some of these languages. It sure is worth looking at if your language falls into one of those categories. There is, as you can see, also optional funding for self-identified spring courses as well. And you also have no minimum proficiency unless you're trying to learn French within Africa. So let's go through quickly. This is the African Flagship Languages Initiative. If you are attempting to do French, this is pretty much the only way, not just the flagship languages, but Africa is the only way you could be doing French. And then, as you can see, if you have a particular location that you want to do, if you want to do Akana, Twi, Wolof, or Zulu, you will have to identify your own overseas programs, but they do have a summer program for you. The Indonesian flagship language, this is a really big one. They are really interested in getting more people who can speak Indonesian languages. I think that not knowing enough about the subject myself, for people who are particularly interested in island communities being thoughtful about climate change, this seems to be a really great option. Ooh, I see a question. Is this Bahasa Indonesian? What a wonderful question, Sally. And I am not quite sure. I can look into that, so I will take a note for that. And my apologies for not knowing that critical piece. The good news is that if that is a specific dialect, that there is quite an opportunity. Like most of these specific dialects are things that you are going to be able to do. If it's not listed in that big old sheet of languages that you can study, which we will pass through as we're doing this presentation, then you should know that that doesn't disqualify it from being there. Especially, again, it also kind of comes back to the argument that if you think that it's critical and you're able to make the argument for its critical nature, then that means that you could be able to study it. Additionally, when we come to the end of the conversation, you'll see there's contact information for Boren. They're there for you. As you can see, I'm a little bit more of a jack of all trades when it comes to a number of different programs that the International Institute takes care of at the University of Michigan. But the Boren advisors that are over at the International Institute of Education, they will have more critical information. So I hope that answers a little bit of it. But yeah, if you're looking for Indonesian, I'm feel very confident that they will be eager to have your application, regardless of the type of Indonesian language that you intend to study. I hope that makes sense. Moving on. South Asian studies are another critical one. They give you opportunities to study within India. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. You'll see also there's a number of summer and domestic programs at Wisconsin. If you're particularly interested in doing a summer study prior to going in the country, Madison, Wisconsin is a good place to look for opportunities to study languages domestically before going out. And then here you go, see University of Madison, Wisconsin again. Additionally, Turkish is another location if you were interested in learning Turkish. They have one of these set of programs as well. So that may leave you thinking to yourself, well, what if I wanted to make this up myself? If you are a scholar, you can go to the University Study Abroad office, or you can come to the International Institute and we can connect you with faculty and staff that are associated in specific countries or centers to help identify a good place for you to go and learn those languages. If you are a Boren Fellow, similarly, you're going to develop a study plan. So you can use an internship, graduate level research, and academic study in order to do parts of your language study. no matter what it is that you do, it's worth noting the Boren office at the International Institute of Education, they can't tell you what is a good language program and what is a so-so language program because they're not allowed to show any preference to it. However, people evaluating your application know the difference between a good language program in that country and a not so good one. So how do you make sure that when you're suggesting you're going to go learn this language at an accredited institution? That's what the International Institute at the University of Michigan is for. We have a ton of faculty and staff who know these locations, who know reputable locations to learn these languages, and we're more than happy to help identify places that are going to be worth your while to go learn these languages if you need that assistance. Also, as a part of the self-identified program, you need to basically determine how much money you're going to need. Are you going to want to be there for only 12 to 24 weeks? Are you going to want to be there for an extensive period of time? Do you want to do domestic study? These are all things that you have to use to gauge how much money you can earn from this award. And if I'm not mistaken, I want to make sure I know what's coming up next. Excellent. Yes. All right. I'm going to talk about that just momentarily. But as you can see, there's a variety of different amounts of funding that you can apply for. If you are interested in doing less than 12 weeks abroad to go and learn this language, it is only for STEM undergraduate students that you can do less than 12 weeks. Everyone else, you're trying to put yourself in the 12 or more weeks to go and study that language. You may be saying to yourself, well, how do I write a budget? Let me talk about it. So here are some different basic components for building your budget. You need a round trip ticket, and you need to have it be out of a United States-based company. The program tuition and materials required, any medical insurance, of which the University of Michigan, if you're a University of Michigan student, we have a very affordable international health insurance plan. And as a student, you also have health insurance. The lodging and food costs for anything that you do in country, including program breaks. That doesn't mean, they're going to fund any of the special travel that you're going to be doing as vacation. But when it comes to the program breaks, if you're staying in country, you're going to need to have someone to pay for, your living expenses as well. Local transportation within reason to and from courses or to and from your research location, visa fees and visa related travel. What is not covered, sadly, is the cost of passports, vaccinations, dependents, personal travel or entertainment, even though it's super awesome. If you need support for things like passports or vaccinations, those are things that you can come to the International Institute for. We may be able to identify ways for you to get that kind of funding, but it's not going to come through Boren. Now, when you're building this budget, it's worth noting there is no reason for why you would want to undersell how much it is going to cost for you to go to this program. You don't want to be all like, I can live in a tent in the middle of Vietnam and it won't be a problem at all. So there's no need to undersell. Additionally, if you're finding that the cost of going to this program, going to this country for a certain amount of time is going to be above and beyond those limits, the like $25,000 for 25 weeks, that's okay. It's just worth noting as you're building the budget that you're going to say, okay, look, Boren is going to pay this much money for my program, and then I'm going to get this additional amount of money from another resource, from here, from there, that kind of thing. So you can showcase, I know the full cost of the program, I know what Boren can offer me, and I know where to find additional resources if what Boren is offering is not enough. Now you might be thinking to yourself, all right, perfect. I'm just going to slide in right over that 12-week mark, and then it's all going to be just complete candy. It's not impossible, especially for people who have really solid arguments about the fact that they've been studying this language for a substantial amount of time, and they have a clear critical need for the national security effort that you're going to be in. Yeah, you can probably do that. However, as you can see, it's much better if you do your best to showcase that you can do more than those 24 weeks, if you can do up to 25 weeks. I know that this may bump into a lot of issues with faculty that you're working with, especially if you are a master's student or a PhD student. We want to let you know that this is a good way for us to assist with you, is to speak with your faculty advisors and to help showcase all of the opportunities that you have to do research within country or do courses within country so that you can balance this. But effectively, winning applications are far more likely to be in the 25 to 52 weeks. So don't discount it before you apply. It's worth considering if you can spend that amount of substantial time abroad. This is the current list of country preferences. So it's worth noting that you can see there's a lot of gray countries. Those are places you can't go. And then there are the green countries, which are like, those are the places more than likely you can go. One worth noting, however, is the China, which is ironically is written as green. That should probably be more in a blue category as well. If you are interested in going to one of the countries that is in blue, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't apply. It doesn't mean that you don't have a chance of getting it. What you'll need to identify is another location that you might be able to go to learn a similar language. So if you were interested in learning Mandarin, you might list both Hong Kong and China, so that if one should fall through, you'll still have the opportunity to go to the other. Similarly with Russian, if you're particularly interested in learning Russian, just because Russia is blue and is not likely to be taking on any Boren fellows at this time, that doesn't mean that you can't apply to places that are close by, to Ukraine, to, I believe, Azerbaijan. I'm going to get myself in trouble because I'm going to say the wrong thing. But effectively, as long as we're looking for different alternatives, you should be able to still throw in a successful application. Again, here we go. Here are the language preferences. And as you can see, it's worth noting French, and it's not even listed there, and Spanish. There are Boren Fellowships that do accommodate those languages, but they are far and few between. And for French, it is only located in Africa. So if you're particularly interested in those languages, we may want to talk about your applicability and what might be a good option for you. It is also really worth noting that there is a whole host of indigenous languages that are not listed here. For Latin America, as you can see, they have Haitian, Creole, and Portuguese. But the truth is that we could be listing Quechua, we could be listing a whole number of different indigenous languages. So what is the crucial method to get an application through in those regards? That's when you're going to have to make the connection is, okay, it's crucial for me to learn this indigenous language because it's going to help the United States national security effort in this, that, or this way. A really great example that was provided by the representatives of Boren at the International Institute of Education was, okay, maybe you're interested in learning Quechua, and it would be very valuable, as you can imagine, at the Department of Homeland Security, where not enough people speak indigenous languages, and that if they are working on the southern border of the United States and they're trying to help people who are coming to the border, well, maybe they can speak Spanish, but they certainly can't speak these this whole host of indigenous languages, and so that could be of great value to national security efforts for the United States. Again, regardless of your politics or your perspective on these areas, it's worth noting that there is still clearly a critical need for a lot of these languages. So, when it comes to field of study preference, again, it's worth noting, if you can make the argument, you should go for it. There is a real interest in agricultural food sciences, astronomy, public health now, obviously, cybersecurity. We've had a number of students who've been successful in the area of cybersecurity. The non-STEM areas, history, archaeology, anthropology. These are great. They still are of great value. It's just critical to remember that we're making an argument both for what your future career is going to be and why the United States might perceive this to be a national security need. If you need assistance with that, that's also why I'm here. Finally, and this is a part, again, I love this part about the Boren Awards. There is an opportunity for you once you complete everything, you're going to have to come and get a job in federal service. Well, they will hold this federal job search and support opportunity for you. So you're not just going to be out there trying to find a job by yourself. They have a service team. They have exclusive opportunities for Boren recipients. They have special hiring authorities for specific jobs. There are certain networking opportunities. I think now that they're currently virtual, but they were in person and they'll likely be in person again one day, where you literally walk in with your resumes. They conduct interviews on the spot and then boom, you've got a position. It's really for people who are interested in doing public service jobs. This is a great opportunity. FLAS can get you there, sure. Fulbright can get you there, sure. But if you've ever been in Washington, D.C., you can't really throw a rock without hitting somebody who won some kind of award. Boren is one of those really good ticket ins. It's rare. It shows you have a very specific skill, and it shows that you're dedicated to national security efforts. So it's worth noting. It's also worth noting, if you happen to know of anybody who is in the ROTC, that there are specific areas in which you can go to get additional information about being an ROTC member who is applying for Boren. I'm just going to skip that, just because I imagine that there, please let me know if you are associated with the ROTC. I'll go back. Additionally, okay, so as you're looking at the different departments of defense, departments within the federal government, thinking to yourself, okay, where is it that I could potentially go? These are the 4 different top agencies that people will go to: Department of State, Department of Defense, Homeland Security, Intelligence Community. It's all like, meaning the FBI, the CIA. These are the top locations. They are not the only locations. Additionally, if you're sitting there thinking to yourself, well, I prefer to work in, let's say, the CDC, but I know that learning this language is valuable to multiple places, it's worth considering in your application when you're saying, okay, where would I work for public service? You can say, okay, here's my goal. And oh, hey, I understand if that office doesn't have any opportunities. Here's 2 other places in which my language and area studies understanding of this place that I want to go to are going to be of value. The Department of Defense, the Department of State could see it, and all that kind of stuff. Again, as you can see here, there's multiple locations that you could end up going with Boren that are that will fill your foreign service, public service requirement. Okay, so we're rounding the horn. When it comes to your application, what's going to be critical are your essays, obviously. Letters of recommendation. For scholars, it's only 2. They have an optional 3rd letter of recommendation. If you can get that 3rd, I recommend that you do. 3 for fellows. And then that language proficiency evaluation is optional, but it can kind of count as an additional recommendation. So if you have been taking coursework in the language that you want to do for Boren, I recommend that you get an evaluation, even if it is for a beginner level, simply because then you can have the person who is doing your work or teaching you the language can be able to offer, hey, this is this person starting off, but I can see that they're really making large gains. Boren is going to be extremely helpful for them, and they're going to be able to pick up this language very quickly. You're going to need your transcripts, a summary of your study plan, how you're going to be learning this language, and then for fellows, you're going to want to potentially offer research abstracts and methodology and the location that you're going to be doing additional research. So that kind of additional 20 hours when you're not doing language acquisition, the other things that you're doing, you may want to tell them about the research that you're doing. as long as you're making sure that as you're doing these essays, you're focused more on the language acquisition and not necessarily on the research. You're not advocating for the research you're doing per se. You're advocating more as how the language is going to assist you in your research and assist the United States national security efforts. Hope that makes sense. Back again, the essay requirements. I think we've covered this a little bit, but I did just want to make the point, and then you can see that there's the link to go over to the essay guidance. You're going to be making, number one, that national security argument, and number two, your ability to do this overseas language study and your future career plans in government service. So again, as you're making that national security effort, it's really worth remembering that you may want to go to this country, you may want to do this work for the benefit of the people in that country. And I certainly wouldn't be one to disagree with you. I believe in international development as well. In times like these where I'm trying to think to myself, how do I make an argument for US national security efforts? I try to think, what is really the best way for the United States to be involved in another country? And that sometimes the best way is to let that country do the work and have the United States focused not wholly on its own needs and interests, but that, hey, that's who we are. We're the citizens of the United States. We're taking care of the US, and we can do so by working with this country. So it's really critical to make sure that you're framing this not in terms of, I'm going to save these people, but the research that I'm going to do in this country is going to benefit the United States in XYZ way. It's better if we know about this. It's better if we, for diplomatic efforts, for army-based efforts, whatever it is, that's normally how you're going to want to make sure that you frame that argument. For the career plan side, a good tip for that is to remember that you may have future career plans that are that are wonderful, that you should definitely have, that are aspirational. Say, for example, a foreign service officer position. God, wouldn't that be great? Well, it's worth remembering that a foreign service officer position, you don't just apply for that. You have to go through tests. They have to evaluate you. You have to be nominated to that position. You can't just kind of walk in. So, okay, maybe your future career plan is to eventually become a foreign service officer. What are you going to do in the meantime? Are you going to walk in as a GS9 and you're going to be an analyst in one of these offices? Are you going to work as a contracting agent to give information about, doing STEM engineering for one particular company that works as a contractor for the United States national government? You're going to want to think about what all of the steps it takes to get to the career that you are interested in. The reason being is because when Boren is giving out money, they don't want you to come away with this idea that you just walk right in. They want to give it to people who are definitely interested in working in federal offices, who understand a little bit that there's a bureaucracy to get through, that it takes time, and that you're going to be working your way into this system. So it's really good as you're writing your career plans to showcase that you understand that trajectory a little bit, that you have a top goal, and that you know how you're going to get through step by step, that, hey, I'm going to go here and then work my way into the role that I really want to have. Thank you so much for sticking on. So for those of you who are interested in the scholarships, again, there is no campus deadline. You are just able to apply. That being said, I am more than happy to read essays if you'd like. For the Boren Fellowships program, the campus deadline is January 16th. It is worth noting that we would like you to submit your application by the 16th so that I can then review it and then say, hey, I viewed this person's application. I think that they're really good to go. It's worth checking them out. Dear Boren, please take this student. If for some reason you are wrapping things up and you just do not have time to submit your application by the campus deadline for me to review, that's fine. Submit anyway. Boren is more than happy to see your application and get it through, and it doesn't necessarily need my reviewing it to be able to move forward. The national deadline, though, as you can see, for scholars, it's going to be February 2nd, and for the fellows, it's going to be January 26th. There is still plenty of time to be able to do this program, and I am here for you if you need advice on doing additional advising appointments. And then finally, after submitting this, it's worth noting they have to go and review all of these applications. So the soonest that someone could go study abroad in these countries is June 4th, 2020. And all of this study and research will have to end before March 1st of 2023. If you need to contact anybody, as you can see, the Boren Awards contact for the International Institute of Education is on one side and our office is on the other. If you had specific questions about, as you were saying, I think, where was it, Sally, that you might have been saying about that specific Indonesian portion, I strongly encourage you to reach out to that phone number. They pick up immediately. They're wonderful. And you can ask them directly, hey, is this part of the Indonesian program? They're going to know it just like that. That being said, I'm more than happy if you wait for me to provide that information to you. And I can send you a message when I find it out. And then you can see there's a couple of links down there if you wanted to get onto our website. So if you've been watching this and you're like, nah, I'm thinking about Boren, but maybe there's some other options. I strongly encourage right now that you go and check out, especially if you're looking at Boren, check out FLAS, check out the International Institute Student Fellowships, which is open now. Those are really great additional opportunities to either conduct research projects abroad or to get language acquisition.